What's good, family? Back with another video. Now today I'm about to give y'all a reaction to not Karl Marx, I'm sorry. I'm about to get, I didn't even look at what I was reacting to. I'm about to give a reaction. No, is Marxism responsible for Stalin? It's a very curious question. I'm very curious for this. Very curious about this. But Richard Wolff is about to tell us about this. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on post notifications. You smash that like button. And we're going to figure it out. Let's go. Let's hop right into it. It's 15 minutes. So let's hop right into it. No time to waste.
Why did Stalinism, for example, lead to so much bloodshed, do you think, and human suffering? Is there any elements within the ideas of Marxism that catalyzed the kind of government, the kind of system that led to that bloodshed?
I don't think so. I think there are many things that led to the bloodshed and to all that Stalin's regimes did. And you know, I spent 10 years of my life with another economist writing a book about that, to try to explain from a Marxist position the rise and fall of the Soviet Union. You might want to take a look at it sometime. But there, I'm going to say a few things now, but all of those things are spelled out in great detail with loads of empirical evidence, etc. In that work. But let me start with, playing a little bit with Hegel.
Make 2025 the year resolutions become reality. Start your degree with WGU.
The biggest impact that Marxism had on the Soviet Union was really not so much what the Soviet Union did, but what the rest of the world did. I mean, you had a really interesting move, and I'll give you a parallel from today. The move was that the old Russian regime collapsed. World War I, it fell apart. The Tsar and all of that, it couldn't survive. It had already been in trouble. There was a revolution in 1905. There was the loss of the war to Japan. I mean, if you know Russian history, which I assume you do, you'll know that there was a lot leading up to the collapse in 1917. Mm-hmm. And in some ways it was fortuitous that the political group, very small, that could seize the opportunity of that collapse happened to be Marxists. Earlier on, with Kerensky, the first government that tried, it wasn't people all that impressed by Marxism. It was people more skeptical and would not have been called Marxist probably by history. They tried, they couldn't. Lenin and his associates were able to take over from them later in that same year. The rest of the world, though, was horrified. The rest of the world saw Marxism having taken this immense leap from being a political party, a movement, critical of capitalism, yes, but still not challenging the power. Now it had the power, and in a big country. And they freaked out. If you know American history, this country, the leadership of this country went completely berserk.
Yes.
We had a repression of the left, the likes of which we had not seen before.
And all of that because some of the wealthiest people do not want to spread their wealth. They do not want to be on the same level as everyone else. That's the argument, right? That's the big argument. It's crazy, but it's interesting.
The 20s were a time of Palmer raids in Boston, the Sacco Vanzetti trials. I mean, really grim hostility. And you had the four countries agreeing to invade the Soviet Union to try to crush the revolution. The U.S., Britain, France, and Japan all attacked. 10,000 American troops. So what you had right away was a notion in the West that this was unthinkable. There was a great professor at Princeton, Meyer, I forget his first name, who wrote this wonderful book about all American foreign policy since 1917 has been obsessed with Russia. Even now, this fight with Ukraine is half about Russia, as if Russia still was the Soviet Union, as if people hadn't figured out. That was a big change back in 1989 and 90. You know, Yeltsin and Putin are not what you had before, or at least they're not Lenin. They may not be so different from some of the others, but in any case. So you had one factor was the utter isolation, the utter
And you know what's interesting about Putin specifically? Like, think about it. Like, I don't think Putin is a great leader because his nation loves him, right? But I also think that it's interesting how the Soviet Union the Soviet Union is no longer the Soviet Union. And it's became an oligarchy, almost in a way. If you really think about it, it's became an oligarchy. Let's get going.
Condemnation, the global. I mean, Rosa Luxemburg. I assume you know Rosa Luxemburg is hunted down in the streets of Berlin. She's a critic of Lenin's, by the way, but she's a leftist. Hunted down and hacked into bits, killed.
So you're attributing some
Some
of the bloodshed to the fact that basically the rest of the world turned away.
Turned against.
Turn against. So you turn against is the better way.
Very, I mean, not in order of importance, but it's a very important part of the psychology of being, it's what you would call paranoid if there weren't quite as much evidence that indeed there was a lot to be afraid of at that time. Nobody had ever done it. Look, you could see the effects of it by Stalin inventing the idea.
Get a final expert review before you file at no extra charge with TurboTax Live Assistant.
Which had no support at first, that you could have socialism in one country. That was thought to be ridiculous. That socialism was internationalism. Marx was against capitalism everywhere. It was, workers of the world unite, not workers of Russia unite. Workers of the. He had to go through a procedure of kind of coming to terms with the fact that the revolution he had in Russia, which was tried in Berlin, was tried in Munich, was tried in Budapest, was tried in Seattle here, they all failed. And he's left seul, the French would say. Tout seul, right? All alone. That's one. The second thing is economic isolation. Russia's a poor country, and it needed what it got before the war, which were heavy investments from the French and the Germans particularly, but others too. Now this was all cut off. And you can see the replay with the sanctions program. We're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. We have to do it. We have. The world is different and the sanctions don't work, but they're going to try them. Because it's the history. But that culture today is completely different. Russia's a different place today, but Russia has China, and that changes everything. And they don't.
I'm missing his point. Are you explaining the bloodshed between Stalin, or are you just ranting? I'm not trying to. I really do like Richard Wolff, but are you just rambling off? Like, the question was, what led to the bloodshed from Stalin? So, I'm following him, but is it getting up to the point of the bloodshed in Stalin? Like, you're talking about Putin, and you're talking about China. Let's get back to Stalin.
Get that here yet, but they will.
Yeah, there's a very complicated dynamic with China, even with India.
Yep.
Or
Brazil.
Sorry to say, human nature may change at a slower pace.
Yes.
That
has occurred to me as well. I get that point.
So can you steelman the case, or consider the case, that there's something about the implementation of Marxism, maybe because of the idealistic nature of focusing on the working class and workers unite, that naturally leads to formation of a dictatorial force, a dictator, that says, let us temporarily give power to this person to manage some of the details of how to run the democracy, of giving voice to the workers so that they get to choose, and then that naturally leads to a dictator. And there's naturally in human nature power, and absolute power, as the old adage goes, corrupts absolutely. Is it possible that whenever you focus on Marxist ideals, you're going to end up with a dictator? And often, when you give too much power to any one human, a small number of people, you're going to get into a huge amount of trouble.
You've pushed things together there that I would. I think if you give
Pushed is a good word.
Yeah, it's German. If you remember, I told you my mother was born in Germany,
And then your dad is French.
yeah, but he was born in Metz. If you know European, it's a city on the border of France and Germany. And if you come from the Alsatians, Alsace in German.
So they're German-speaking
Yeah,
French city.
both. It's bilingual because it's been back and forth so many times in medieval days already that it literally, you go from one store to another, the proprietor here is French and the proprietor there is German, but they all speak both languages because you don't speak either of them?
I speak Russian.
Russian, but not German.
Maybe Ukrainian, no. I took French for 4 years in high school, but I've forgotten all of it. I remember the romance and the spirit of the language, but not the details. I'm sure I can remember.
If you allocate power unequally, undemocratically, and you do it for a very long period of time.
If you give me 20 seconds, I will guarantee that you sign 20 clients. How? I'm going to help you use the exact...
no.
And you do it on many levels of ideology, it is not surprising that it sticks and it stays. And you can make a political revolution or even an economic revolution, and you will discover it has a life of its own. It's going to take a long time.
I'm enjoying what he's saying 1,000%, but I don't think he's answering the question. And like, I love Richard Wolff. Don't think I'm not a Richard Wolff. I'm a Richard Wolff fan. I love his spiels. Normally he gets to the point, but it's taken him a while. Like, is Marxism responsible for the evil of Stalin? I would say no. I would say no. I would say Stalin. Everybody was like, I don't know. Stalin. No. I don't think so.
Before people don't. If you have a religious tradition, Christianity, that prides itself on its monotheism, and that it doesn't want to have anything to do with the old Greek mythologies when there was Zeus and Diana and all the others, and they were very human-like, but instead we have one who is the absolute beginning. And what are you doing? You're teaching people an authority line that comes from the individual. If you have a sequence of kings, if in your feudal manor the lord sits called the landlord, he has unspeakable power over everything that goes on, and you do this for thousands of years, you can make a Russian Revolution in 1917, but if you imagine you've gotten away from all that people assume without ever thinking about it, you're going to have trouble. Stalin is figured here as the originator of his situation. He wasn't. He never had that power. He may have thought that, but I don't. He's the product. Look, the Cuban people made Fidel, who really wasn't that kind of guy. He was a baseball-playing lawyer. That's what he was. But they made him into ta-da.
So it's not. It's not the.
You're the
system,
product
it's
of
the
history.
people.
No. It was the systems, feudalism, the church. It was the structures and institutions that cultivated in people a mentality that has its own rhythm and doesn't follow the calendar of a political revolution.
Dang. Okay, so he brought it all the way here. Yeah, so the systems that have existed for centuries is what created Stalin to be what Stalin was. The systems that existed. It wasn't Marxism within itself. Marxism is a product of those systems as well, but the rage of Stalin was from the systems. I get that. That's real.
The fundamental question is: there something about communism that creates a mentality that enables somebody like Stalin or Mao?
No, I think it's the social issues problems the society has that make them then go to what they find familiar, to what seems to make sense, and he's the guy. Look, let me give you an example from American history. The Republican Party has traditionally, in this country, been the party of private enterprise and minimum government.
Yeah, for sure.
In comes Trump, runs for office in 2016, is elected. Okay? What does he do? He commences the most massive tax increase and the most massive government intervention in the worlds of economics that we've had for decades. Nobody says anything. The Republicans cave, and the Democrats largely too. They cave. He can throw a tariff on anything. He gets up in front of the American people and he says the Chinese will pay the tariff. That's not what a tariff is. It's not how a tariff works. He would flunk a freshman course in economics, which everybody knows. Everybody who teaches these courses. No, it doesn't matter. He's still calling the shots. What is going on here is that a society has come to a point where it can't solve its problems.
Yes.
And it begins, what? To tap into older forms and all of the laissez-faire and all of the individualism from the, and suddenly the Republican Party is gung-ho. Now they're going to make abortion illegal. The government is telling you what you can do with your uterus. What? What? The government is being given more and more and more and more power. They're hoping, what? Do they like the government? No. They're desperate. This is not a pro-government, and it wasn't in Russia either. They were in a desperate fix. And he took advantage.
Wow, yeah, he brought it home in that end. Yes, I've noticed that, like, conservatives confuse me. They want less government, but Trump is intervening in everything. He is signed more executive orders than any president in history. That is coming straight from the government. Those are dictatorial pieces of paper that explain to us how things are going to go. That is the president saying this is what needs to be done. Some of them are good. A lot of them are like, whoa, you know, I don't even know if he can really fully do that, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Hey, thank you for watching all the way through. I appreciate you. Let's go.